2/3 of the union members who went to vote on November 4th voted for Barack Obama. And one of the most important things I think that happened is that top officials like Rich Trumka, who was the Secretary of Treasury of the AFL-CIO, stumped in a number of states, including our own. And the message was threefold. One, racism is the worst sin in the United States. Secondly, a lot of our union members are racist. Thirdly, they better get over it. They better get over it because they should know, understand what is going to happen if they maintain that kind of racism and if they let it affect how they act politically. The other thing that he talked about was how important it was for labor who the next Secretary of the Treasury is and who people down the line from the Secretary are. And they were very concerned that people like Lawrence Summers, some of the other people in the Clinton administration, not be put back into positions of influence. I've got to say, I think Rich Trumka must be very disappointed from what we've seen so far. What we've seen so far doesn't promise a new path. We haven't seen, for example, any mention of why people who are working on the floors, making the automobiles, aren't present in the boardroom as members of the board. We haven't seen, for example, any discussion of why some of the money which is being given doesn't go to give stock to the workers working on that floor. Why they can't be owners of the plants as well as workers in the plants with real influence. The workers are being acted upon under these circumstances. They're not being turned into active agents. This is an example at the national level how we cannot rely on voting for somebody and putting them in national office. But we're also feeling the impact at the local level. And what we're talking about, I think, can be thought of in two general senses. One, that nobody who is being negatively impacted, particularly people on the bottom, people who are being evicted because they can't pay their mortgage, they can't pay their rent, people who can't get health care, people who are losing their jobs. Nobody in our local area should feel alone. This ought to be of interest to the entire community, and there ought to be a solidarity in this community with those people. If you're in a union, you have that kind of solidarity. As Gene said, he is called to situations in which workers need help. But this has to go beyond workers. This has to go to everybody in our society who is preyed upon by this system and the way in which people are trying to fix the system so it goes back to the normal system. So, what we are also talking about is creating something on the order of the World Social Forum. Those of you who know what the World Social Forum, some of you know what it is, but it is a world coming together of different non-governmental organizations to discuss the problems facing the world, the problem of poverty, the problem of environmental degradation, problems such as this. People coming together, discussing them, coming up with attempted solutions. That's how the Kyoto Treaty came about originally. But why can't we have something like this here, where we have a social forum? We might have it in this very hall. And people who are active in different organizations can come together and we can talk about, first of all, what's happening in this society. Because you don't get it by watching the news. You don't get it by reading the News Gazette. You don't know how people are being negatively affected, except statistically. You'll read about all these layoffs. You'll read about the social service agents having to lay people off. Of course, when you're reading how people aren't going to have access to the medical care that maybe they used to have but they didn't have to pay for. You read statistically, but the point is that all of us should be conscious of these negative impacts. So, at least I am thinking of three kinds of functions that such a social forum would have. The first one would be defensive. Somebody's in trouble. Somebody's being evicted. Somebody's being refused medical. Immediately, the word goes out, and people flock to that person. So that person doesn't suffer alone. There's a sense of solidarity. That's a word that we need to reintroduce in our vocabulary. In certain countries like France, there's actually a ministry of solidarity. They think it's important that people care about each other. We individualize. We haven't been so individualized that, not in my backyard, it's not me, what we care about. But what we're hoping is that in this community, we can overcome that, and people who are in trouble can ring certain people and say, hi, we're in trouble, and the network goes out, the news goes out, and the people are there to help. A second thing that we would be involved in, besides this protective, defensive action, would be public policy issues, where we articulate public policies, where we say, at the national level, for example, at Harlow, so, hey, why aren't you guys talking about workers being on that corporate board? They'll tell you a few things. They'll tell you how these other guys are ripping off the system, and they won't let it happen. They'll make noise. At the local level, we want to be involved in policy, how we can change the way things are being done at our municipal level, at our county level, at our county level, at our county level, sorry, at our state level. And then thirdly, an electoral dimension. When we get somebody like Carol Lammons who's willing to serve, we put them in office until we have a whole bunch of Carol Lammonses. A whole bunch of people who understand what it is to be poor in this society, what it is to be sick in this society and not have health care, what it is to be poor in this society and not have a house or apartment to live in, to be sleeping in your car and then you lose your car because you can't pay for the car. So this is what we're hoping we're about. Bringing people together, bringing a number of organizations who've been sort of working on their own and not communicating with each other, not alerting other people to some of the problems that we have in this society. So if tonight can become a beginning, I don't want to say there isn't some solidarity in this community. I think this is a great community. But I think the challenges that we're facing now are going to be monumental, monumental compared with what we have, even in the last 8 years, we've been facing. So collectively, let's get together and let's act.